Hello, everyone, and welcome to Going the Distance Mental Stamina in Sport and Life. This is a collaboration between the Gold Coast Marathon and Southern Cross University. My name is Dr. Chris Stevens, and I will be your host for today's webinar. Firstly, I'd like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the lands on which we meet today and pay my respects to elders past, present, and especially those who are joining us today. This webinar is designed to help you prepare for the Gold Coast Marathon running events, but also give you some strategies that you might be able to use in your personal and professional life as well. We've got a panel discussion for you today that's going to go for around 30 to 40 minutes. And then after that, we'll have 20 minutes or so for questions from the audience. Feel free to pop questions into the chat as we go, and we will get to them a little bit later. If you like a question that has been posted by an audience member, then give it a like, as we'll focus on the most liked questions first. So let's get started by introducing our panel for today. We have Benita Willis. Benita is an Australian long distance runner, a 3-time national champion in the women's 5,000 metres, and is an official ambassador for the Gold Coast Marathon. She was a gold medalist at the 2004 IAAF World Cross Country Championships and also won teams medals at that competition on 2 occasions. She has competed at the Summer Olympics 4 times and has twice represented Australia at the Commonwealth Games. Her unique elite background and expertise allow Benita to help people achieve their goals with individualised online run coaching through her business, Lace Up Running. Our next panel member is Christian Swan. Christian is an associate professor in psychology at Southern Cross University and leads the physical activity, sport and exercise research theme within the Faculty of Health. Christian's research focuses on how to set goals effectively, the psychology of exceptional performances, and the promotion of mental health through sport. And he'd never tell you, but he's also a pretty decent golfer. So Christian can offer some insights from an athlete's perspective as well. We have Jenna Buchan. Jenna is a lecturer in sport and exercise science at Southern Cross University and an accredited exercise physiologist and wellbeing coach with a passion for education. She is also a competitive beach volleyball player who has taught a wide range of exercise science and exercise physiology units at the university level for more than 11 years. In her clinical research, she has a background in running exercise and oncology trials with an interest in goal setting, habit formation, and enhancing well-being beyond the physical domain. And finally, I'm an associate professor in sport and exercise science at Southern Cross University as well, and an accredited sports scientist with Exercise and Sports Science Australia. And I've got some experience supporting elite race walking athletes prepare for major events, and I'm also a keen runner myself. So with the introductions done, we're going to get into it. We are just over 2 months, 2.5 months we've got before the event. So I'm going to start with a broad question to hopefully help everyone with their preparation. I'm going to come to you first, Benita. How should people be preparing for these running events over the next few months? And also, how does it differ between the different events that we have in the Gold Coast Marathon, all the way from the 5K through to the full marathon distance?
Yeah, thanks. Look, so if we're looking at, say, if you're in the marathon, the marathon's, it's such a long way. So you really need to start focusing your training on specific long runs, and they need to start pretty soon. So you need to sort of figure out what you think you might run for the marathon. And it's fine if it's your first one and you just want to get through it and, run or walk the whole way, that's fine. But if you're trying to get a goal for the marathon, figure out what pace that might be. So say if you're trying to break 3 hours and that's 4:15 per K, you need to do a fair bit of your training at that sort of pace. So you're practicing your marathon pace. And I always think you've got to keep up your interval type training each week. So you need to be running some intervals that are faster than your marathon pace. So they might be, you might do some K reps at 4-minute pace. Or something like that, something about your 10K pace. So you need to be able to run faster than your marathon pace in the interval sessions and shorter races. So when you get into your marathon pace, it should feel quite comfortable. And anyone that I coach, and when I was preparing for my marathons when I was an athlete, I always did those marathon specific sorts of sessions, and that could be anything from you know, you work into it. It could be sort of 5 times 3K. And that sounds like a long way, but it's working up to your marathon pace. So say if your goal is to run under 3 hours, the first 3K might be, you know, 4:20, 4:25 pace, and then the next 3K might be for sort of 15, 4:20. And then you do a few of those 3Ks right on your marathon pace with a K float. So that's a particular sort of session that you could do well into your marathon training, say probably about 6 weeks out. I always think too, with a marathon, it's really good to do a half marathon in the prep about 3 to 5 weeks out. And it just gives you practice at race day specific stuff. So in that half marathon you pick, and you could do a 20K or a half marathon running training, doesn't have to be a race, but practice what you're going to eat before your marathon, practice this before the half, you know, practice your marathon pace maybe for the first 15K of the half marathon or whatever hit out you do, and then try to run a bit faster at the end. Practice your fueling. So whatever you think you're going to do in the marathon, practice this in a race situation in your half, because, you know, we always say practice in training, but when you get it actually into a race, you get a bit nervous and maybe you need to change a few things up. So it's really important to practice once if you can in a race situation. And then going to the marathon, obviously we need to make sure we taper. And I always look at tapering probably at least starting to taper 2 weeks out. And we're all different with tapering. You don't dramatically reduce your volume, but try to reduce it a bit 2 weeks out. And especially that last weekend before the marathon, I wouldn't be running any more than sort of 15K for the long run, and nice and easy as well. So you want to do a few marathon pace efforts in there, just so your body is ready to run hard, but you don't want to do too much that, you know, I've made mistakes in my career before where I've probably run my marathon in training 3 weeks before the actual marathon. So I've gone a bit too hard in training. And when you start feeling good, that's sort of what you want to do. But just make sure that you hold it back and save it for the race. And look, if you're running 5K, 10K or half marathon, I think the training for all those races are quite similar. So the marathon's quite different. And those races, you really need to be doing lots of interval sessions and lots of tempo type runs. So if you're training for the 10K, you need to be able to do interval sessions like even 400s that are 5K pace or faster, or things like that, you know, hill reps, shorter sort of efforts. And sometimes you have long recovery so you can run a bit faster. And if you're training for the half marathon, it's all sort of the same thing. Make sure you do some tempo runs in there too, because it really helps top up your aerobic system. But it's good to have a bit of variation in your training. So don't just sort of do every run the same. We all have a tendency to get out there and we might run 5 days a week and just run hard every run for 5 days a week. But you want to have really easy days. So say if you're training for the marathon, you're trying to break 3 hours and your pace is 4:15, your easy runs should be slower than 5-minute pace. So just make sure that your easy days are easy and have 1 or 2 hard days where you're doing interval sessions or tempo runs that are a bit harder. And you need that variation. I always think it's like it should be like each week, you shouldn't have like if you look at your Strava, it shouldn't be all runs that have the same intensity. Some runs should be higher intensity, and then the easy days should be very low intensity. And don't think about if you're going easy on an easy recovery run and you're running really slow, that's actually helping you recover. So, you know, don't think that you're not getting fitter if you're not going hard all the time, because that's a common mistake. And just make sure you don't, because that can really get you into a hole. You want to try to cram. It's not like, you know, you're doing an exam and you cram in all the study, and you know, running doesn't work like that. You can't cram everything in, and you can't go hard every day. So just make sure you're having that recovery. And I think recovery is key, and making sure that you enjoy what you're doing as well, because that's sort of the top of my list: enjoyment and recovery. And then obviously doing the right training, but you need to be enjoying it first, and then everything else comes under that. But enjoy it, yeah. And just make sure that you think about what you might run and what pace, and sort of put that into your training. Is a huge thing that I do with runners that I coach.
And what about someone running the marathon for the first time? You spoke about doing some high intensity work in there. How important is the high intensity stuff for someone that's just building up to the distance?
Oh, look, I think if you're running the marathon for the first time, the thing with the marathon is you want to be able to get to 30K and feeling relatively okay. Like we all know, even elite athletes, they feel very tired at 30K. So I think the base training, so the time on your feet's the biggest component. And whether that might be that you're doing walk jog. So you might do, if this is your first marathon and you can't run more than say 20k at the moment, you might do 30k where 10k's of it is just walking, just to get the time on your feet, and then you're gradually building up. But if you can get to the stage where you're running a 30k long run and it's your first marathon and you might only do a couple of those, then I would be able to put in some faster type interval sessions. I mean, it is very important to be able to run a bit faster than the pace that you're going to run in the marathon, because that just makes your marathon pace feel slow. So even if it's your first marathon, I would be doing some interval sessions, and it could be something like 3 times 3-minute efforts, and these 3-minute efforts might be at a pace you could do 10k at with 90 seconds walk, and that's only 10 minutes of sort of hard work. So it's really depending on the level that you're at. If you're new to running, really don't do sessions that take longer than about 15 minutes of high intensity. But if you're running a long time, you can do a bit longer. But yeah, if you're new to running, I think it would be best to be guided by someone coaching you to really help you. But if you don't have that luxury, just look up some different sort of fartlek or interval type sessions, but make sure you don't do them for longer than about 10 minutes. But I think if you're new to running, make sure you're getting that base running in for the marathon. And even if that's walking, it's still time on your feet.
Yeah, nice. And you spoke about practicing pacing as well. What can go wrong? It's a long day if you go out those first couple of kilometers too hard, isn't it?
Yeah, look, it's a long day, and like we all feel awesome at the start of a marathon. And look, I've been in I did Chicago Marathon one year, and I remember the day before the race, I did my last just a shakeout run with a guy that I knew from New Zealand, and he was telling me what pace and what he was going to run in the race the next day. And then I saw him after the race, and I said, "Oh, how'd you go?" And he goes, "Oh, DNF'd." And he just went out way faster than he said he would. And look, that's a common mistake, because he told me, "Oh, I felt so good, so I just went for it." But look, our training sort of should indicate what shape we're in. And you're not going to sort of all of a sudden gain fitness just by going fast and hoping that you're going to hold on. Like the marathons, sort of, you've got to really make sure that, you stick to your pace. And if you don't know your pace, that's fine. But if it's your first marathon, I would be conservative rather than aggressive with the pace. And at Gold Coast Marathon, they have heaps of pace groups. So if it's your first marathon, you might try to do it in 5 hours or 6 hours. So you just run with that pace group. But you're always going to feel good. So I've definitely done that before. I've gone too hard in the first sort of 15k of a marathon, and although I finished the race, you pay for it in the second half, and it's a brutal way to run a marathon. So I would say, just make sure you're relaxed at the start, and go even slower than you think you should. But if you've got a pace in mind and you see the pace groups, running it with a pace group can really help, because you can just relax and you don't have to sort of worry about looking at your watch all the time. You just relax and let the Ks tick over. And the biggest thing in the marathon is being relaxed for as long as you can. So if you can relax until 35k, you're probably going to run a really good marathon. It's how you control your emotions. And the people that have run the best marathons, they keep their emotions fairly steady. People, that tend to sort of have really, high emotional high at the start, and then they have a low, and it just roller coasters the whole way. That just takes energy away from your race. So just try to think of being relaxed as you can for as long as you can, and conservative.
Nice. I'm sure as an elite runner, you always were very motivated to do your training, but I wanted to know, how do you find motivation for running, and also how do you help the athletes that you coach find motivation for running?
Yeah, that's a good one, because I think motivation, it's one thing that I think it goes through the various stages of your life. So when I was an elite athlete, obviously I was motivated by the Olympics and big races I was doing. And I always found I used to race the best when I picked what race I wanted to do, because it had the most meaning to me. And whether that be, like, obviously, you always want to be in an Olympics and run for Australia, whether that's, World Champs, Olympics, Com Games, lots of things like that. Like, they're motivating, but then also picking a major city marathon that you want to do is motivating as well. So I found that really exciting. But now I'm a mum, I've got a 6-month-old baby, and running for me, and my motivation now is getting out of the house, running with my baby in the stroller, or I've got a running pram actually. Just running with her and just starting to feel fit again. And I haven't even picked any races or anything. My motivation is just getting out the door and just enjoying being outside and running. And, so we're all motivated by different things in our life. I feel like people I coach, I think a lot of them are motivated by races they pick or what they're doing in training. But certainly for my role, I feel like the variety of the coaching, the training sessions I set for them is really important. So that's, the different sorts of sessions, the terrains that we use. So it might be hills, you might do some sessions on road or grass, go to a new location. My group go to lots of different locations between Brisbane and the Gold Coast, just to try to mix it up. And I think that really helps with motivation as well. And just trying to sort of have coffee after runs with people. I think a lot of people are socially motivated as well. And when I lived in America and I was coaching a lot, we would meet every year, have all our online athletes meet at Boston Marathon, because that was a big thing, was qualifying for the Boston Marathon. And people would book their accommodation like the day after the Boston Marathon finished of the year before to go back the next year. And it was a huge sort of get together of people all around the world that are in the same coaching group. So I think being connected socially is huge as well.
I find my motivation builds as my fitness builds. I sort of, I'm scared to lose my gains. So I like to, that gets me out the door over and over again.
Yeah. And that's what I love. That's awesome. And that's what I love about running. It's what you put into it. It's what you get out of it.
Christian, you're leading a line of research at Southern Cross University based on goal setting in sport and exercise. What are some of the key things that you found with this research so far?
Well, first of all, I'm trying to figure out if my head's naturally slanted or if it's my webcam that's slightly off. In terms of the research that we're doing, yes, we're leading a line of research here, which is essentially trying to figure out what the best ways of setting goals to help people get the most out of the activities they're engaging in, whether that's in running or other forms of exercise or in sport. We know that different types of goals do different things. And if the runners out there are sort of looking for guidance on how to set goals for the Gold Coast Marathon events, and if you just Google that, you're likely to come across lots and lots of guidance around setting SMART goals. And you'll probably hear that your goal should be specific. And that's a really common assumption sort of worldwide, that if you're going to set a good goal, it better be specific, otherwise it's not going to work. And so there's a sort of a misconception that goals are sort of a one size fits all. But the work we're doing is busting that myth a little bit. And we're actually seeing that there's very different types of goal doing different things. And so the real skill to goal setting is understanding which type of goal to use in which situation to help you get the most out of it. And so we know that, for example, in what Benita just talked about, there are people who will have run loads of marathons, loads of events, will be really highly experienced and elite and very skilled. But there's also people who are going to be first timers and won't know what they're doing. And Google will tell them that they should set the same type of goal. And SMART goals and specific goals will probably work really well if you're elite and you're experienced, or you've run a number of events before. But a very different approach is likely to lead to better outcomes if this is your first time. And that sort of links back to how goal setting originated as a topic. It came from the workplace, where essentially it was a tool for managers to get more out of their employees. And those employees already knew how to do their jobs. So adding goals helped them sort of squeeze a few more % out of their productivity. But obviously that's very different if someone's just learning how to do the task in the first place and doesn't really know how to do it yet. So our research is focusing on what to do when you're not suitable for a SMART goal, or it might not be set up best for you. And based on the studies that we've conducted so far at Southern Cross University, our advice at this stage, if you're aiming for the Gold Coast Marathon events, regardless of the distance, and it's your first time, our advice would be to try what we call an open goal. And open goals are commonly phrased like, see how well you can do, or see how fast you can run the 5K event on that day. So they're quite exploratory, open-ended. They don't attach a specific number or time to the outcome. And the data that we've got so far suggests that for those individuals who haven't had that experience yet, they're likely to lead to just as good an outcome, if not slightly better outcomes than SMART goals. But really importantly, they're going to lead to much better psychological outcomes and much better experience on the day. So we know from the studies we've done so far that they're likely to help you enjoy it more. You'll feel a lot less pressure. You'll feel more confident, and you'll feel like you've done a better job on the day. So that's quite important, particularly if it's your first time. And yeah, you know, obviously a lot of those times when it is your first go, you just want to have a good experience, and you know, you hopefully want to come back and do it again afterwards. So the research that we're doing, is really trying to nail down what type of goal is going to suit which people in which situations, help people understand different types of goal and know when to use different types of goal for different things, and ultimately help people feel better while they're doing the task, and hopefully achieve good outcomes on the day as well.
Would it be okay to have the goal to sprint the first 200 meters of the marathon to try and get on TV? You know, that shot that you often get that everyone wants to be in?
I'll possibly defer to Benita on that one. But it's an important thing, because especially if you are sort of thinking about events like the Gold Coast Marathon, you often feel like you should have some kind of target in mind to give you direction and to help you, structure your training plan, for example. And so it can be a really easy thing to just pluck something out of thin air and say, yep, I'll go and do that. But we know it's quite a sophisticated process to get it right. I'm sure Benita's experience, will tell you that it's not a straightforward thing necessarily. And if you are unsure, then what we've found so far is that really quite forward phrase of just aiming to see how well you can do. Starting with that will help you sort of build up a bit more knowledge and understanding and see how you're tracking. And then gradually you might be able to add in specific targets once you feel you're ready for them.
Yeah, and you also ran a survey last year with the Gold Coast Marathon to try and understand how runners in the event set their goals. What did you find in that?
Yeah, we did. So we were really lucky to send out pre-race survey and post-race surveys last year, and we had around 800 people fill in both, including 235 superstars who we were able to match their data for both surveys. And the results are really interesting. We're in the process of really understanding the ins and outs of everything that we've got. Obviously, that's a lot of data. But what we see so far is that across all of the events of the Gold Coast Marathon weekend, 65% of people set specific goals and 35% of people set sort of more open-ended goals. So that's actually quite a lot of people who are setting the non-specific goals, which I think is a good thing for them. 30% of participants failed to achieve their goals. So one thing we're thinking about is, well, does that matter? And again, I suspect it's possibly different between first timers and people who are quite experienced. And, experienced runners will often use specific goals to challenge themselves and push for a new PB, for example. And for them, it might not matter so much if they fail to achieve that goal, because they're runners, they do it all the time. They probably have other events lined up. So in terms of their sort of attachment or engagement in running, it might not make a huge difference. But it could affect someone who's a first timer quite considerably. And, the worst case scenario is that you go and you manage to successfully complete that distance, whether it's 5K or a marathon, but you're disheartened because you didn't achieve the specific goal that you plucked out of thin air 6 weeks ago. And that could put you off. And actually the data that we found so far suggests that there's around a 6% difference between the likelihood of coming back to do the event again, depending on whether you achieved or failed your goals. So again, we haven't really drilled down into that properly, but there's definitely something there around the impact of achievement and failure in terms of your subsequent motivation to come back and do it again. So there's lots there, but some really interesting sort of headline findings already. And again, it sort of links back to what I just mentioned a little while ago around if you are lining up to do it this year, think carefully around the type of goal that you're keen to pursue. If you feel like a specific goal might not be ready for you just yet, then start out with something non-specific in the first instance, and get into training, gradually build up. And if you're ready for a specific goal, or you have a coach and you're prepared to work towards a specific goal, then fantastic. But don't feel like you need to if it doesn't feel like it suits you. And feel free to just challenge yourself to see how well you can do on the day, and that's totally fine and likely to give you hopefully a good experience on the day as well.
Benita, what types of goals do you set with your athletes, and also what training techniques do you use to help you prepare mentally before a run? I'm also interested in what your routine was in those major events that you competed in, such as the Olympics as well.
Yeah, it's interesting hearing about the non-specific goals, because I've never thought of it like that. And I've had athletes in the past, or not necessarily athletes, but rec runners that have come to me for coaching and have tried to achieve X time at this race, X time at this race, and they haven't achieved it, and they've just been battered down again and again, and they've come to me for coaching. And I sort of tend to take the approach of don't put pressure on paces for sessions, times for races, and they tend to run better than they've run before when they're sort of not chasing a specific time. And it's interesting. So I've never thought of it like that. But for some people that I've worked with, that's been the best sort of thing that they could have done. So it's very interesting just hearing the research, because I think there's heaps of stuff in there that people can take away from even today. And if you're one of those people, maybe you go into the Gold Coast Marathon with whatever event and try a different approach. So look, as an athlete, I didn't necessarily, when I was competing, I didn't even have a watch that kept the pace, because it was before those times, which I think, I was talking to someone about it the other day, and you ran on feel most of the time, which I think, for me, cross country was my best event, and cross country is all about the competition. It's not about what pace you're running. It's all about where you come in the race. So it's about the conditions, it's about the course, and it's about competing with other people. And I think, for some people, taking away their watch that gives them the paces, that might actually help them compete better and run better, because, you know what it's like. You look at your watch and you go, I can't believe I'm running that slow. And then it gets you in this spiral of a downward momentum. And I had a paced watch right at the end of my career, but certainly, I think that can be one of those things where it might be a good thing to practice. And I used heart rate a lot with my training, so I did tempo runs based on heart rate. And so if you can have a look at your heart rate zones, then sometimes if you're a bit tired and your heart rate's slightly up, then you're not going quite as hard because you're going at heart rate. So you're actually doing something that's better for your body than having this pace to go and having something locked into your mind, and I'm going to do this no matter what, and it might put you in a big hole training wise. So that they're sort of I did have goals, but I had a few years where I'd come off the year after I won a world championship. I felt a lot of pressure from everyone was trying to beat me because I've just won the world cross country, and I felt like that year my goals weren't to come top 3, they were more to come sort of top 10 in events. And I never had pace specific goals, because I didn't have the paced watch, and I didn't have even when I broke 11 Australian records in my career. I never went into any race thinking to break this Australian record, this is the pace I need to run. I was always better when I just concentrated on the race and let the end result sort of take care of itself. And I think for a lot of people, that's a really good approach to take. But we have been sort of, look, with my coaching as well, people want paces and they want sort of targets. But sometimes we need to sort of take a step back and sort of just try to be a bit more relaxed about it and run on feel. And I think for some people, they can get even better results. So that's sort of one area that's quite interesting. Yeah, just hearing all those studies. And sorry, what was the second part?
And it was about your mental preparation. Like, what was your routine before a big event?
Yeah, so mentally, I think mental preparation for me, I know I worked with a psychologist a bit in my career, and I recorded a tape back then about sort of relaxing places, and it was about like beach. So it was a bit of music and just talking about the beach where I grew up. And sometimes I played sort of this before races when I was pretty nervous. But my routine was mostly to keep relaxed, keep around friends, try to, if I'm racing a late night race, because a lot of our races in those days were late at night at the track meets, having coffee with people, just making sure that you stick to your normal daily routine. So when you come into race day, don't try to, whether it's the Olympics, like I didn't do anything different in the Olympics as I did in just a race down the road in the town I was living in. So just make sure, even if it's a big race to you, don't sort of think, oh, I've got to do all these things differently. Your routine, you've got to practice your routine and keep it the same, try to eat the same, and that's one thing that'll help you feel more relaxed. I used to go to races, and sometimes, you go to races, and you would even do this if you're going to the Gold Coast Marathon. You might have to arrive an hour and a half, 2 hours early. I used to always take trashy magazines to read. And look, there was no phones in those days, or you didn't really have stuff on your phone to read, but reading stuff that's just trash, that's nothing to do with the race. And then don't think about the race until just before you start to warm up. So a big thing for me was not going over the race over and over in my head days out from the race. So especially when you're going into, big races or races that, you want to really focus on, don't sort of try to think about it before you go to bed each night. And a lot of people sort of, they think that might help them. Really look, sometimes you could think about it maybe when you're talking to your coach, or thinking about it in the day or two before, and then forget about it and don't think about it till you start sort of getting ready for the race. And then look, once I got into races, I tend to find that, say in a marathon, I might think about motivating people in my life for every different 5K, that I was thinking about this person for 5K, this person for the next 5K. Or I might even think about, training sessions I've done, and, think back to a training session I've done. And so if I'm at sort of 10K, say I'm doing the marathon at Gold Coast Marathon, if I'm at 10K, think of where you're at 10K in a training session that you've done, sort of a long run that you've done around where you live. And at the time when I was living in London and training for a marathon over in Chicago, I'd think about all these places in Bushy Park in London where I'd train, and then think about that 10K mark in my training in London when I was at 10K in the Chicago Marathon, and thinking back and just sort of trying to really relax yourself and not thinking too much about the race. Like you can't, in the marathon, you got to almost be thinking about not too much for the first 30K and then really get more focused. But if it's your first marathon, try to think about something different every 5K, because they can tick by slowly. So just have a think about what you might do. And I always say 5K because that's usually when the nutrition stations are as well. So if it's your first marathon, make sure you're taking some drinks and taking some gels, and but just enjoying it, not worrying about pace. But just I think your mind, the better prepared mentally you can be, the better your results going to be. And it's sort of one of those things that you don't want to be thinking about stress that you've got in your life that you had last week, or something you didn't do yesterday that you need to, you can't, it's very hard. You've got to sort of change your focus to what you're doing now and enjoying yourself in the moment, rather than thinking about things in the past or something that hasn't gone quite right.
Jenna, what would your advice be for someone to help them manage their thoughts during a run?
Yeah, so thanks, some really great points. And a lot of you might be thinking, oh, it's easier said than done, or I wish I could just switch off. But a good thing is, to recognize that the harder you try not to think about something, the more you tend to think about it. So starting to recognize, do I get really focused on my body? Am I quite kind of internally centered, where I can feel and hear my heartbeat, and I recognize my breathing, and oh, there's a pain in my foot, if there's a rock in your shoe, please stop. That's worth acknowledging. But if you're someone that gets quite focused on that internal sensation, start to notice the sounds around you. Challenge yourself to look around at the scenery. On race day, there's so much going on externally. It can be a good way to kind of shift that mindset and to pull yourself back into the moment in that space. If you're someone that's really focused on those external components, where you might be, checking your watch and really focused on keeping the pacing up, challenge yourself to run without your watch, to run out without your music, to really take those moments to shift back to that internal, and like Benita said, to run on feel sometimes, especially as your training increases, as you might, today is going to be my hard run, and then you don't sleep well the night before, or you've got a lot of stuff that comes across your plate unexpectedly at work or with the kids or whatever it might be. Taking those moments to tune into yourself a bit more will really help you make sure that you're getting the most out of your training sessions and not just doing it because it was the next thing on your agenda and on your routine. So starting to recognize, if you tend to shift internally, challenging yourself to change it up every now and then, and take some time to journal or to write your thoughts down, or if you're running with your phone, to record them and just get them out rather than trying to shut them off, because it's that, if I tell you not to think about a white elephant, that's the first thing that's going to come to your mind. So.
And for people that are doing a lot of work, living a busy schedule, how can they get the most out of their recovery and sort of live a more holistic and healthy life?
So I think with something like this, or any sport or goal that you're pursuing, it's not just about that physical prep side of things. It's about recognizing that nutrition is really going to support your recovery, using things like food prep, because the week itself is hectic. So if you've got that Sunday afternoon or that Saturday morning to do your shopping, to get your food prep going, to take nutrition off the cards so that it's not something you try to find time for every day during a busy week, to recognize how essential sleep is, and start to come up with a routine around some of those components. Aim to have a consistent time to go to sleep. Aim to, keep your sleeping environment cooler, and aiming to have a consistency with when you wake up. Keeping those types of things quite consistent to then make the other components quite consistent, and doing your stretching while you're watching TV or answering emails or sitting at your desk. Finding those little opportunities. We often think if we can't allocate half an hour to something, then we just skip it. But recognizing those 1 to 2 minute little things can be so important, even if it's just sitting, having a drink of water, taking that time to wake up, or sneaking in 1 minute of stretching while you're sitting waiting for an email to come through. So finding those little opportunities, but building those into your routine and your training schedule as well, and not just that physical training side of things.
I'd like to, we're going to open up for questions from the audience shortly. So I'd like to invite anyone to pop any questions in the chat that you might like the panel to answer. But just on that, just off the back of what Jenna said there, Benita, I'm interested in your routine when your training was going really well. Did you find you had a really dialed in routine?
Yeah, I think routine is really important. And I think, when you see with a lot of athletes, or even people that have had structured training that you've been coaching, when they stop training, whether they retire or they stop structured training, their routine falls away, and they tend to sort of not achieve as much in any part of their life. So I think structure is really important, and having a really good routine. For me, sleep's the number one recovery tool. I didn't use, Normatec boots. I had, used ice baths after hard sessions just in my bath wherever I was living, or cold streams if I was training at altitude. But I didn't use any other recovery techniques, really. I didn't stretch much. I really I think nutrition and sleep, and being able to relax. So when you're not, when you're not looking after your kids, you're not training, you're not working, try to make sure you're having a bit of downtime. And it's okay to just do nothing for a while, even though, like, I've got a little baby, I hardly ever do nothing now. But I know when I was an athlete, you feel like sometimes, doing nothing actually does help you recover, and you've got that luxury. And I know people that have, busy jobs and families, like, they don't have that luxury, but if you ever do, it is something that will really help. But yeah, look, getting really good sleep, consistent sleep, going to bed at the same time, getting up at the same time, I think is really important. And I think that if you're getting good sleep, that's going to really help you structure everything around that. And if you're not getting good sleep, I would think I would investigate that before you even look at training programs or setting goals. I think, you've got to really make sure that's down pat. But yeah, look, I use very old school recovery techniques. Easy runs are a recovery technique, or easy days or rest days within your training. But I didn't use a lot of, they're not gimmicks, but there's a lot more things out there these days that people can use. So maybe they would have helped. But yeah, I think you think back to the most old school things, and it's nutrition and sleep.
And Christian, with your research around goal setting, would that also apply to non-athletes, and can people use those types of goals in their personal life or their work life as well?
We think so. Yeah, we haven't conducted studies outside of sport and exercise at the moment, but there are other studies from other groups that are doing similar things, and the research is suggesting that, the same ideas do apply. And that makes sense as well, right? Like if we come back to the point that in some tasks you'll be really familiar with and experienced in, and in other tasks you won't, then obviously it makes sense that different types of goal would be relevant in different situations. And actually, the biggest goal setting researchers in the world often talk about how you might be really competent in your job role, and specific goals might work fantastically well, but you might get promoted, for example, into a management role, which requires a completely different set of skills. And they say that your previous goal setting approach won't apply as well in that new context until you've developed those skills again. So yeah, I think regardless of whether it's running or something outside of running, the basic premise of just thinking carefully around what type of goal you want to set, knowing that there are different options, and not feeling like you should just automatically set a SMART goal because that's what Google says. And yeah, if you're not sure, then just challenge yourself to see how well you can do it, whatever that task is. That could be setting a savings goal. If you have a really clear motivation to, get a deposit ready for a new house, then obviously that mindset can be really conducive to a very specific target, and you might work out, what daily and weekly savings you need. But if you just want to save more in general, then just seeing how much you can put away is a stress-free, low-pressure approach that will probably still see you saving a decent amount. And that's just one example from a non-sporting domain. But think carefully and feel free to not set SMART goals.
All right, well, I'm just about running out of questions. So what we might do is switch over to the audience questions from here. Can I ask everyone in the audience to just have a read through the questions and give any question that's there that you're interested in a like, and that'll promote it up to the top, and we can focus on the most liked questions. Currently, the most liked question comes from Legend, and his question is firstly for Christian. He's about to do, or the Legend is about to do, an ultra marathon in New Zealand, and they'll be doing the Gold Coast Marathon in July. What would be your advice on the mindset for the last 10 kilometers of the race, which are always the hardest for them? And they're close to the end, but the body feels the effects of the 30 kilometers that they've already done, and they start to mentally struggle at that point.
Yeah. So I myself have only ever run up to half marathon, so I would also be really keen on Benita's thoughts on what I say here. But from a goal setting perspective, there's a really well-known effect called the goal gradient effect, which essentially means that the closer you get to your endpoint, the more motivated you're going to feel, assuming that goal is specific. So based on that sort of well-known research in broader psychology, the end is actually, from a goal setting perspective, probably quite a good time to set a specific goal if you haven't got one in the race so far. So, if in the earlier stages you're setting a non-specific goal or a more open-ended goal, and you get into the last 10K, then if you check your watch, if you do some maths, if you set a specific goal at that stage, from a goal setting theory perspective, that's actually likely to give you a boost in motivation. And as you chase down that target, you're getting closer and closer to it. So you're likely to feel more and more motivated. It's a little bit like what Chris mentioned earlier, that he gets motivation from putting runs in the bank, and he doesn't want to lose that momentum that he's gained. That effect is sort of magnified the closer you get to the goal. So if you haven't got a specific goal at that stage and you're entering the final stages, you could try setting a specific goal based on, you know, how the run's gone so far and what you think is realistic. And that could give you a boost of motivation. Obviously, the big caveat to all of that is that your body's in a good enough shape to then go and pursue that goal. So I'd be really keen on Benita's thoughts on whether that makes any sense or whether I'm talking nonsense.
Yeah, no, yeah, that makes complete sense. And I think, yeah, like that. Yeah, it's quite, I like listening to all this stuff because, yeah, I've never thought of goals in the sense of, of those different ways. But I think like in the last 10K and like, obviously, yeah, your body, you want to have done the training and your body's holding up. But for some people in that last 10K, you know, I think, and momentum's a really good word and a good thing to think about. For some people, seeing how many people you can pass in that last 10K and focus on that rather than what sort of specific time you're getting. And I know the more people that you start passing, that gives you energy and it sort of gets your adrenaline going. And I know races I've done myself or people I've coached, if they sort of start a little bit more conservatively and they're running on in the second half and their last 10K, I know we're all breaking down, our body's breaking down in the last 10K of a marathon or these trail races, but the stronger you're feeling and the more people you're passing, that's really going to help you get to the finish and maybe set yourself a goal of what time can I do in the last 10K? So forget about what time you've done up until 32K in a marathon and just see what time you can do in that last 10K and maybe have a think about that being a goal rather than the overall time. But yeah, look, it's a really hard, it's a hard one, but specifically, I always think the more people you can hunt down, the better, you know, your result's going to be at the end. And it's something that you can really think about when you're getting to that stage of a race rather than how much you're hurting. And, you know, sometimes that can sort of mask the pain when you've got something else to think about that's different. But yeah, I love like all the goal setting stuff. Yeah, it's great.
Our next question is from Harry Wood. A question for everyone. The main stretches to incorporate into your weekly training routine, and is foam rolling overhyped?
I'll jump in on that one to start.
Yeah.
From the physiological side of things, foam rolling kind of goes back and forth with it helps this, so it doesn't actually help this. A lot of it seems to come from kind of the perception of people with actually this makes me feel better. The most research supports maybe a slight improvement if it's done as part of the warm-up for a few physiological components. Typically, they tend to look at more kind of power sprint, non-marathon type activities. But a lot of people might find that if they do it at the end, they feel quite good. It gives them at least this mental perception of having recovered a bit. So there's that tough kind of balance of physiologically, not too much saying everybody should run out and buy a foam roller and make sure they do it before and after everything. But if mentally that's something that helps you get that sensation of a bit of recovery, a bit of reduction in soreness, then, you know, go for it. Stretching consistency is probably one of the biggest keys to make sure you're getting benefits from it. Finding that routine again, you know, not feeling like you have to go to a 1 hour yoga session. As a yoga teacher, I highly recommend that. But, you know, it can be hard to find that. And stretching often gets kind of pushed to the wayward because it's one extra thing that we feel like we have to do. Or if you've done a training session, to then sit for 10 extra minutes and do some stretching can be challenging to add that one extra thing. So it might be something, again, you're doing sitting at your desk. There's some easy, simple stretches you can do in a chair for 30 seconds while you're watching TV, while you're helping the kids do homework, finding those little bits and times throughout your day. But if you're going to do it and really get benefits, it's having that kind of consistency of I'm doing it, you know, every other day where I can, rather than if I stretch once a week. Probably not going to get too much from that.
Benita, did you find stretching or foam rolling to be beneficial for you?
Oh no, I didn't do. I mean, occasionally I did foam rolling. Sometimes I took a foam roller to a training camp. I found soft tissue therapy probably the best. So massage, but like I know we're not talking about that. But foam rolling a little bit. I didn't stretch much. I didn't do yoga. But I'm not promoting yoga. But for me and my body, I found that recovering, like for me, was just trying to relax as much as I could. And now, being a really busy mum, I only have probably less than an hour a day where I can do something, and I don't have. Well, I could stretch. I could do some stretching while my baby's playing, but I never have done that too much. But I think as we get older, I think it's probably more important. And it's one of those things that you get away with a lot of things when you're young.
And what about plyometrics? Jackson's asked if what your view on it is, and what would be some of the best exercises.
Plyometrics, I feel like plyometrics is really good training for shorter distances. And when we're older, we have to be really careful with plyometrics because it can tend to cause injuries. I know, so I was at the Australian Institute of Sport on scholarship in my sort of late teens, just before I was 20. And the running program at the time was going through a big stage of bringing in a lot of plyometrics. So that's like box jumps, lots of like one-legged jumps, tuck jumps, heaps of sort of hopping up a lot of stairs on one leg. And I got my only stress fracture from doing that of my whole career. And I have tried plyometrics a bit with older people that I've coached over in America. And we used to do sort of a big in the pre-season or base training phase, we used to do quite a bit of plyometric work, and a few of them did get injured from it. So now with my coaching, I tend to think of sessions like hill sessions is more specifically running plyometrics for you. I don't think, I think strength is more important than plyometrics as we get older. But it's really just managing that against the sort of running you're doing as well. It can have a part to play, but I think it's really important not to overdo it, especially if you're training for something like the marathon, because a marathon takes so much out of you. I wouldn't do it in a marathon training phase. If I was going to do plyometrics, I'd do it in a base training phase where you're not really training for specific races. You're doing lots of jogging, maybe tempo runs, lots of volume, and then that's when you can add in plyometrics and a bit more strength as well.
I suppose your basic running drills could be classified as somewhat of a plyometric exercises. Do you ever incorporate any running drills into your sessions?
So running drills, we do them sort of 2 to 3 times a week, and there's lots of different plyometric type running drills you can do, and you can do them on grass, and that even helps to sort of minimize the impact, and things like even you can do sort of bounding, where you're sort of trying to stay up in the air as long as you can and landing on one foot, and then you push off again. So it's sort of like slow motion running, but being in the air for a long time. You could do sort of jumps like frog jumps, and see how many jumps you can do to a certain cone. So anything that's sort of jumping related as well, but even things like heel kicks and high knees. And we used to do one called high skip, which is sort of skipping, but really pushing off one leg to get air. And so things like that, I think they're better, and just doing little bits rather than, doing really massive amounts of plyometrics in the gym or a lot of jumping and landing on hard surfaces. I think that that can really sort of put a bit too much pressure on your body. And I'd just be careful of when you use that sort of training. But running drills you can use all year, and I think they're really important because they also help with running economy as well. So I think they're really important to put into any training program, and you can do them before sessions, and even if it only takes 5 minutes, like it doesn't have to take long, and it does have a lot of benefit.
Rory Flanagan and a few others are asking about doing the marathon in the humid conditions of the Gold Coast, especially when they're coming from a colder place like Victoria. Have you got any tips there?
Yeah, that's a hard one. I saw that question. Look, like in an ideal world, you know, you'd want to come to somewhere that's humid to prepare, but you're not going to be doing that. I think the only thing, you know, the humidity is relatively low in Queensland in winter, but you know, the only thing I can think of is if you can do some runs, and it's very hard because you're coming off a cold winter, like you want to be going somewhere that's hot to get that practice. So I think might help in years like in the future if you might come out to Queensland and do a race that's in preparation for the Gold Coast, so you have a bit of that stimulation. Or obviously if you could, you'd come to Queensland like a few months before and get used to the humidity. But I think humidity at the Gold Coast isn't too bad, although I know Victorians still feel it even in winter. But like for us here living on the Gold Coast, we think it's freezing here in winter. But humidity is not too bad. But to prepare for humidity, you sort of, and like obviously some athletes use humidity chambers to go running on the treadmill. I know they do that in Victoria, but like generally people are not going to have access to that. You can wear more clothes when you're running to sort of like we used to do that some years preparing for hot, humid races when I was living in London. We'd go out for runs and wear heaps of clothes like tracksuits and waterproof tracksuits over the top. And like people would look at us like we're like very strange running around. But, you know, you want to try to really make sure that you're sweating a lot and getting ready for a race that's going to be hot. So that's probably one of the tips that you could do. But if you've got access to a treadmill where you could make the room really humid or hot, that's probably another one. Or go to, you know, come out to Queensland and try to do a race before the Gold Coast Marathon somewhere. But that's probably not an option. But yeah, it's a hard one. But I think if you've prepared well, you're still going to run well, especially in the middle of winter in Queensland.
Adding in some regular hot baths or saunas is another way that athletes can get some heat acclimation adaptations. There's Tex and some others that are interested in stitches. Why do I get stitches if I eat or drink before a long or a short run? How can I prevent this and stop feeling stitches during a run?
Yeah, stitches is a hard one. You know, I know a lot of people, I tended to, if I got a stitch, tended to try to really focus on my breathing and slow the pace down as well. But yeah, I know some of the best athletes in the world have problems with stitches. And so it's a tough one. That's a tough one. But you need to practice drinking something and eating something before runs, because you should do that before any race. Like you shouldn't go into a race not having eaten or drunk anything since the night before. So that's how I tended to get rid of stitches. But yeah, I don't know. I don't know any other advice.
I've always found stitches are caused by eating a certain type of thing too close to the run. I know some athletes that do get up a few hours earlier than what they would just to have their pre-race meal as early as possible to try and prevent that. So it's something you can experiment with in your own training, eating your pre-race meal at different times or trying different foods to see what's going to work on race day.
Can I jump in on that one? There's a lot of nutrition questions in there. It's definitely something to try and get a bit more individualized support with, but really important, like Chris said, to trial and error things before race day. So that should be part of your training, is figuring out what you're eating. Does it sit well with your body? What's the response? You know, don't just grab a gel on the race because everyone else is, and then realize that it doesn't necessarily end well. So you should always be kind of testing your nutrition side of things leading up to it, not just day of. It's the last thing you want to get wrong on the day.
We've got a question. This one's for Benita. I'm still trying to figure out a realistic marathon goal pace. What's the guide to take the half marathon pace to set a marathon pace?
Yeah, that's a hard one because for some people, what they run in a half marathon, if you're better at half marathons and 10K, you know, you probably and you might have more variation between your times. So I would say it's hard 7-8 minutes, but it's hard it's hard looking at what what part, like if we don't know what sort of runner you are as well. So for example, some of the Japanese athletes, their half marathon PBs are similar to what they go through in their marathon at through halfway. Whereas like for me, my best marathon was 2 hours 22. My best half was 67 minutes. So there was lots of variation. And if I went out at my half marathon pace in a marathon, you know, you'd be blowing up. So I know they're asking for the numbers. Generally, people that are trying to break 3 hours for the marathon, I just use this as an example. So that's 4:15 pace. You should be able to run at least, you know, 1 hour 23 for a half or so. But, you know, there are some people that run 1:21 for a half and they just break 3 hours. And there are other people that can run 1:25 to 1:28 for a half and they can break 3 hours. So yeah, it's very hard to say. But, you know, I know some people have formulas for this, but I need to have a look at the person and what, and what they're better at. But I would look at least sort of 8 minutes or so.
Very hard to say without knowing the person and their strengths and weaknesses, isn't it? I've got a lot of people that like to listen to music when they run, and they're thinking about how they're going to adjust to running without that music. Does anyone on the panel have any advice around that one?
So I didn't ever do any races with music, but I find that I really like to just keep looking at people running in front of me. And I know that sounds weird, but focusing on you know, their numbers or different things, or thinking about even different songs, or thinking about different people in your life rather than having that music, or just thinking about stuff that that you really want to focus on each 5K. But yeah, I know some people think about even songs constantly over and over in their head, but I tended to like to just focus on the pack I was running with, and just, you know, brief looks at surroundings, but more just focusing on people around me and just my breathing and trying to think about motivating people in my life.
And I guess there's
allowed to run with music too, I believe, in the Gold Coast Marathon. It's not against the rules to use music, but
yeah, I'm sure you can. I think you definitely can. Yeah.
Sorry, Christian.
I was just going to say, from a psychological perspective, there's also the element of just sort of appreciating what you're doing and taking it all in. And sometimes music can actually do the opposite of that. You sort of focus so much on the music, you forget to, you know, enjoy running in front of the crowds and having them cheer you on, and sort of taking in all the significance of the event and being able to do what you're doing. So yeah, just sort of tuning into that can also be a nice thing, especially if you are running in front of a crowd and they're clapping. And yeah, that's, for most of us, that's probably not going to happen very often in our lives. So probably a good thing to take it in while you can.
We are getting very close to our time for this webinar, but I might go with one more question here from Tamara Helen, because this is something I'd planned to get to, but didn't quite have a chance, that I think is very relevant. How do you psychologically manage disruptions in training? Training for a marathon with young kids and a full-time job means that sometimes you need to skip a planned run during the week or cut your long run short. How do you deal with these events but still get to the start line feeling like you've adequately prepared? And I might also throw in the injury factor in there, which we didn't touch on. It's not uncommon for runners to become injured and go through setbacks. Does anyone have any thoughts on that?
I'll just speak about missing something in training. And like, people miss stuff all the time, even elite athletes that it's their full-time job. You know, they always miss things, and don't think that you've got to make it up on a different day. Or you might think, oh, I missed 2 sessions last week, so this week I've got to add them into my already busy week. That's fine. If you miss a session, that's fine. Just focus on what you've got coming up. But if you miss a few long runs in a row, just remember that sometimes your long runs might be progressive. So just make sure that you don't keep progressing the volume that you haven't done. Make sure you do the first one that or, you know, say if your long runs are progressing by 2 to 5K each weekend and you've missed a few, don't all of a sudden go from running a 20K run to a 35K run. So just make sure you're always progressive, and, you know, your longest run might end up being a little bit shorter than you'd planned. But the main thing is not adding in extra training. And if you've missed something, don't worry about it. Just move on and focus on what's ahead. And, you know, things happen all the time and you've got to adjust. Like being adaptable is a huge part of preparing for any of these sort of events, and being as consistent as you can. But no one's perfect and no preparation's perfect. So the most we can think about is just making sure that you don't try to make it up.
And everyone goes through setbacks, you know, it happens to everyone. So how you manage that and recover and get back into it faster, you can actually get an advantage if you have a good, you know, if it's an injury, if you follow a good rehab program.
Yeah, I was just going to add, Chris, again, from a sort of a psychological perspective, the black and white thinking around what it should look like is probably the biggest issue. And like both of you said, the reality is if you look at everyone's training plans, you're going to have very, very, very few people who hit every single thing in the same way that they had intended right from the start. Human nature and life means that things are inevitably going to get in the way. So getting rid of the expectation that things, like, you have to be 100% fulfilling that plan, that's a good start. If you think through the reality of how it's going to go, some weeks will be great, other weeks won't. And there's probably some middle ground in there around what it will actually look like for most people. And if you can work towards that middle ground in terms of your expectations, obviously making sure you're taking on board coaching advice and some of the things that Benita just mentioned. But also it might well be suited to a more open-ended goal for the training program. Open goals are much more about building your accomplishments and sort of logging each step of the way rather than trying to chase down this endpoint that you're sort of fixated on. And so it might help you move away from that notion that you need to deliver every single day according to your plan. And instead, it might help you sort of focus on where you started and the progress you've made since then, and, you know, just adding to that progress as you get closer and closer to the start line. So again, depending on what your goal is and where you're at with the event, that might be one option.
And Benita, just a comment from Rory following up on about training in humid conditions. He's going to tell his wife that you told him he needs to go to Queensland. An extended holiday as preparation. And there's a few people just asking about coaching. Benita, can you recommend? I know you've got your coaching business. Do you want to mention what you've got on offer, and if there's anything else out there that you recommend for people that are on a tight budget?
Yeah, look, I do individualized online coaching primarily. I'm based in Queensland, but and my business is called Lace Up Running. But I find individualized coaching is if you can afford it, it's the best way for most people, because it's taking into account your work life, your family life, what you're looking at to achieve, and your age, your running history, and your running age, and combining all of that together to make up your weekly plan. So I find it's very hard to get plans off the internet, and no two plans really suit two people, even if they're training for the same event. So that's what I do. But look, if there's some running groups in your local area, it's always great to join a running group as well, and to go on some group runs. Like a lot of people that I coach and write individualized plans for actually do some of their running with groups, so they're meeting people. So look up for some local running groups in your area as well. But if individualized coaching, that's sort of the number one thing that I do, and I think that can really help.
Nice one. Well, we're nearly 10 minutes past the hour, so we better wrap things up. Thank you to everyone who has joined us today, and thank you to our panel members for spending the time to help everyone with your advice in leading into the event. Good luck to everyone that's doing the event. Hope you have a good run and enjoy yourself out there. And you will see the Southern Cross University folk on course and in the recovery tent as well. So feel free to say hello. And we've also got our Southern Cross University clinic at the Gold Coast campus. And we offer a range of different services, from exercise science, exercise physiology, osteotherapy, podiatry, podorthics, all those sorts of things. So that's somewhere that you can go to see an expert if you need to on any of those types of issues. But other than that, we will leave it there. Thanks all, and see you at the Gold Coast Marathon.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, guys.